Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the April 8th regular meeting of Council. The City of Parksville recognizes the people of the Coast Salish Nations and their traditional territory upon which we gather with gratitude. Council, today up front is the consent agenda regarding the minutes of the Council meeting held March 16th, 2026, and the approval of the Council meeting agenda. Do I have a mover or seconder for the recommendations, please? Councillor Gore moves. Seconder by Councillor Beal. Thank you. Any errors or omissions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you. Thank you. Carries. We have one delegation on the agenda today from FizzaHarris Designs regarding the zoning amendment application at 104 Lee Avenue. A presentation by F. Nadeem of FizzaHarris Designs regarding a zoning amendment application at 104 Lee Avenue. It looks like we have something up on the screen. Are you going to join us on the podium? Thank you, Ron. Welcome. You have 10 minutes for your presentation. We're looking forward to hearing what you have to say today. Thank you. And if you introduce yourself as well, please. If you introduce yourself at the same time. Yeah, thank you.
Good afternoon, respected Mayor and respected Council members. My name is Fizza and my client, Mihai, is here too. I will be presenting the proposal today for the rezoning application for 104 Lee Avenue. So for this application, our goal is simple. We are looking to take an underutilized lot and turn it into a thoughtful example of gentle density that benefits the community, the street. The site plan, as you can see on the screen, 104 Lee Avenue is specifically unique because it's a corner lot facing Lee Avenue as well as Ford Avenue and Craig Avenue. Right now, Ford Avenue is specifically it's essentially kind of a backyard lined with trees and hedges, but it's more of like a private for the owner, but it creates a dead zone for the public. Anyone who is walking by, there is no connection to the neighborhood. I will just quickly bypass this to show you the existing streetscape on both avenues. On the top, that's the existing streetscape for Lee Avenue. The left side is 104, then two other neighboring properties showing the overall architecture and the neighborhood. As you can see, there is street on the eyes on Lee Avenue, but Ford Avenue is mostly used for either parking if there's a garage or just facing the backyard, facing the street. So we're looking to replace those blind spots and hedges with front porches, windows, and just adding natural security. So the residents will naturally look out of the sidewalk, making the walk to the park, to the library, to the store much more safer. Now I'll go back to the proposed development. So there is an existing house facing Lee Avenue and a driveway. What we are looking to do is get the lot rezoned from RS1 to SLR1, small scale residential, and for the future development. Thank you so much. And for the future development, we're looking at proposed duplex facing toward Ford Avenue, which will have its own closed garage with driveways in the front. Now the Ford Avenue, as this is a full street, it's not a laneway, and we believe that it deserves a face. So this proposal will complete a streetscape, giving Ford Avenue its own identity and basically turning this whole street into a proper welcoming front door community. This is the proposed future development. These are the visuals we are proposing for the future development. Then again, this is going to be a three bedroom each duplex that we're looking at to engage neighborhood, develop adding gentle density, but with the architecture materials that we're looking at, which match the existing Parksville architecture neighborhood. And so the proposed homes will blend in right from the day one. This will be the proposed streetscape for Ford Avenue. So 104 Lee Avenue on the corner side, and then it goes inside the Ford Avenue. Now, a few things that I wanted to highlight that we're looking at for the proposed development. So as we are going into more technology and EV and sustainability, we're looking at EV chargers installed in the garages, dark skylighting to protect night sky, and again, native drought-tolerant landscape, which won't be straining the water supply. Most importantly, this will be a smart infill. We are basically we're keeping the existing house as it is and adding two more homes at toward the Ford side, Ford Avenue, and using the utilities which are already there. So we're trying to be more responsible in growing the community. Ultimately, the proposal is for the people, for the community here, providing missing middle housing options for young families, which are starting out, or even the seniors who are trying to downsize. They will stay in their neighborhood, which they love. And we're also committed to using local trades materials to keep this investment right here in Parksville. So in closing, this rezoning is again just about not just about building more and adding density, but it actually means utilizing the existing roads and infrastructure to grow the community, making the neighborhood safer and more vibrant. Thank you so much, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thanks very much, Fizza, for your presentation. Well done. I do like the layout that you've got. You've checked off one of our check boxes, which is that missing middle that we have here. And it's actually better land utilization, creating a duplex in this. So you're creating housing for, I would like to say, more affordable housing for families anyways in our area, which is what we're encouraging.
Correct.
So thank you for listening to what we're looking for, and thank you for your proposal. I also like your addition of actually including an enclosed garage on each one of the units for each one, which is going to limit the amount of on-street parking that might be. You've got a driveway in front, and plus you have a parking spot within the building itself.
Correct.
In a garage, and it's an attractive design, and I thank you for that.
Thank you.
So that's all the comments I have at this time. I'll open it up for council. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Gore, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon. Thank you for coming. I remember you presenting similar proposal previously to this council. Has there progress been made? I haven't seen any construction on the last.
Yes, correct. Thank you. I'm so happy that you remember. That was 130 Lee Avenue. Rezoning was approved. Subdivision has already been approved. We have been issued the PLA. The client is currently taking quotations from civil contractors to get the servicing done. Because most of the servicing was coming from Lee Avenue. So to accommodate Ford Avenue, we have to have an easement and get the servicing done from Lee Avenue. That's where the process is.
Correct. And thank you. Reading the engineer's report, which you probably have seen for this application, a similar request comes for getting the services from Lee instead of Ford or Craig Street. So are you prepared to kind of have that all things easement and everything in place so this moves a little faster than the first one?
For 104.
104, yes.
So in this case, we have an engineer working with us. Here, the servicing is a little bit different because it's a corner lot. So we don't have to have an easement. But as we move forward with the subdivision stage, we will definitely, we are working with the engineer, the reports will be submitted to the municipality.
One final.
Go ahead, go ahead. Sure.
Thank you. To accommodate these two nice looking duplexes, this duplex, would you be asking for any variances in setbacks and whatnot? Because I think to accommodate especially those garages, you might need a little variance to make sure that happens. Are you anticipating any of those?
Not currently, but yeah, as we will move forward, we will have to, but this is again something that once we start the planning, we will look into it if that needs to be done. But again, we are looking at a thoughtful development. We're not trying to get variances on something that we can waive off. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Martin, go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And thank you very much for your presentation. It was really good. When I was reading about this and what you're doing there, I was very thinking that it looked like a good project, but it's also, I just wanted to say, we need more of this in our city, what you're doing. This is the way I see it.
Yeah.
And so people do have ownership. It's not asking them to say, they would put, say, a carriage home or something.
Correct.
You know, this is 2 lots, 2 families, 2. And this is what I was feeling very strongly about. So thank you very much. Looks
you.
good for starters. Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Beal, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for your presentation today. I too had read through it as well as our planner's report, and I know we'll be looking at that separately, but I'd like to congratulate you on a very thoughtful design that shows real consideration for the neighborhood. So you've thought not only about that lot and the size of that lot, but how it would fit into the surrounding and truly enhance the neighborhood. And I applaud you for that. I would also like to acknowledge the dark sky, the assurance that the lighting would be downward and the type of lighting, and that there would not be light trespass and so on, because that is, from what I've read and understand, an increasing problem in many urban areas. And finally, also, it wasn't mentioned here, but in the report, there was reference to the permeable surfaces to, in fact, minimize, or how would you say, to look at the groundwater recharge. And that's something that I find is very important to me personally, that I think we want to keep as much rain that's falling on the houses to actually get into the ground in that area. So those were all things that I noticed and appreciated. And, I like what has been presented, certainly. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions for the delegation we have today? Go ahead, Councillor Franz.
Thank you. Through the mayor delegation. It just looked like you were wanting to hear my thoughts here. I appreciate the projects you're bringing forward. I think they're very attractive. The things you mentioned about having the eyes on the streets and improving the face of Ford Street or Avenue is well thought out. I hope we can see more developments like this coming forward, because I think the duplexes there, whether it's for having generational living with amongst the families or just bringing neighbors closer together, I think it's a great fit for the community. So appreciate, especially after seeing the other Lee Avenue one that you brought forward. I kind of envision that this street, if it gets a kind of revamp, if there's more projects like this coming forward, that excites me as well. So thank you for coming out today.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, because 130 Lee Avenue is definitely down the same street.
Right.
And that will be another duplex coming in, again, facing Ford Avenue as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. Any further comments? Councillor Wood, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. As the other councillors and the mayor have said, it makes our decision easier when we feel like the neighborhood is going to welcome this as a better fit. And sometimes we see proposals that we're going to get a lot of pushback for. We're going to hear a lot of concerns, and when you look at these designs, it seems to say more family oriented and a better fit for the neighborhood, like the other councillors and the mayor have said. So we appreciate the thoughtfulness that you put into it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And further, so furthering on Councillor Wood's comments, you're creating the template for others to follow. For creating a blending into existing neighborhoods. And I appreciate that. And so we'll be referring to your projects for others that may not meet quite the quota or quite the design that we're hoping for. And show us how it's done. We really appreciate that. And you're really close to City Hall here. So we'll be watching you. Yeah, thank you very much for your presentation. You obviously, you know that you're coming up later on our agenda anyways for your proposal. So welcome to stick around if you wish, or not, we'll get back to you then. Thank you again. Council, that's the only delegation we have here today. For correspondence, we have two pieces of correspondence on the agenda. One's from the Island Coastal Economic Trust, request for a letter of support. We all saw the emails requesting that from Brody, the ED from Islands Economic Trust. And if I could have a mover seconder for the recommendation. As noted, moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Beale. Any discussion? Councillor Frowes, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I'll keep it pretty short. Just a couple points I want to bring up with this. Well, I think it's a good idea what the ICT is trying to do as far as reestablish their funding with the province. As far as us supporting bringing a letter of support, their plan, they have a pretty large plan that drastically changes what their how they're going to look. They're looking to change their governance. They're looking to change some of the provincial rules regulating them. And to me, that kind of steps beyond what we should be doing as far as looking for support. We weren't part of that process. We're not part of their group like that. I think I'd feel comfortable advocating for them to have funding to keep them going. But when it comes to fundamentally changing what they're doing, it looks like it stretches beyond just reforming the group into kind of a refounding of what they're about. And my concern is that I don't know what direction that's going to readjust them onto, which kind of path they'll end up on after that, if they succeed in getting their ass from the province. And so I could support if they were maintaining the mission they're on right now, but without knowing where they're going to end up, it's hard for me to offer that support for this rather large plan. I think if we were to pick apart the financial components of it, but I see there kind of being three avenues here that and some of them I'm just not comfortable getting into. So I'm not going to support the letter of support just because it's too broad and all encompassing for me. But fundamentally, it's not that I disagree with what they're doing. I just think it's kind of not completely in our lane to get behind it when it's, it seems like it's just a letter of support, like it's not a big impact, but I don't think our name should be attached to such a big plan that we weren't really involved with, and it's really outside of our responsibility with them. So I wish them the best of luck, but I'm not going to support the letter.
Sure. Thank you for your comments, Councillor Frowes. I can comment anyways in meetings we've had with the Island Economic Trust. Anyways, we understand that what they're looking for is more of a platform of continuity. And unfortunately, we've seen from different levels of government and so forth, provincial as well as federal anyways, that they introduce programs, whatever the flavor of the year is, and they create programs and then they discontinue programs without notice, at adverse effect to all the people that have put a lot of work into it, like the Island Iced Tea anyways have done on many amenities for our communities throughout Vancouver Island. And so I think what they're looking is they're just looking to have a better formula in place that will guarantee that they have support from the government for longer periods of time, because many of the projects that Iced Tea take on are not quick projects. They're 2 to 3 and until implementation or build out is achieved. And so they're wanting to kind of strengthen their guarantee that they do have support, in this case from the province anyways, for their funding model that they have approved. But they recognize, as we've recently found out lately, that some of those programs are pulled back without any notice and actually retroactively to some that were already in. So that's why I understand that the reason they're asking for the, yes, it is a kind of a change, is more of a just creating of a better policy so that it's understood long term what the goals are, because many of these projects they go on forever, it seems, before we get groundbreaking. So that was the reason anyways. I thought it was important to bring it up at this time, because we have benefited here in the community, as we know, from the outdoor performing arts theater that we have in the park. Was Ice-T played a big part in that as well. So I recognize that, and I know the other projects that they've done and other projects on the island that has benefited Vancouver Island overall. So I want to encourage them to do what they do. It's a lot of work, but we are at the table with them, which is important to us anyways, because we create the designs and the opportunities for them to support us in what we feel is necessary in our community, and we are at their table, and so we can control them. So just to clarify, it's kind of if we bring a proposal to them, we want to be able to say, now we spend all this time and all of our drawings on it, we hope that you can make this happen. That was part of the reason for my suggestion that we bring it to council and provide a letter. Follow up if you may.
Yeah, just the comment I want to say is that what this is asking us for is for us to dilute our position with them. And so that's where I say, like, how is it going to change if the government's going to make this investment in them? What are we going to end up getting out of it? Because what they're asking us to do is to dilute the governance with them.
Well, it's more just, as I understand, it's just more of a guarantee from the government anyways. But I don't think it will dilute our involvement with them. It may strengthen it, because we have maybe more confidence that if we throw a proposal out there, that we may get accepted, and we're just not one in a queue of requests from other island communities type of thing. So, and we've run into that before when we've asked them, perhaps you can assist on this, whether it's for recreational facilities or something like that. And they say, well, we can't do that right now because it's not in the budget, or we don't know what it's going to be for next year. And I can't see it diluting our activity with Ice-T. I see it as strengthening. And I have to say that Brody Guy has been an incredible communicator, and he lets us know every step of the way what he's doing on any projects and neighboring projects, and asking for our comment and feedback often on it, which we give, with the help of our staff anyways, providing what the impact is going to be on perhaps the city of Parksville. So they've been very collaborative with all of their projects and making sure that we're included. We're at the table, like if something's happening at LIAISON, we know about it, and type of thing, and say, well, that's going to be in competition to us, or like, hey, what about it? So yeah, anyways, we have a good relationship, I can say right now with Ice-T. So sorry, Councillor Gore, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I think what Councillor Frass is alluding to is the independent review that was taken and some recommendations that came out. I think one to note is the co-governance with First Nations that's recommended. And I think that's a positive step for all of us, even as local governments, an important step towards reconciliation, to have that representation at that table. That's saying that minimum 50% have First Nations representation. So I think it's incumbent upon us as local government to support that initiative when we are seeing the similar steps from the federal government, the provincial government, and the local governments should follow suit. I think also the timing of this is crucial. When we are seeing some instances through Cowichan tribes and then the whole court case stuff, I think we should not divert from our efforts towards reconciliation because of that instance. And I think there is a lot of pushback, a lot of negativity since that verdict came on. I think we should stay the course and support this request. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Beal, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I concur with Councillor Gore's comments here. And I think that, in fact, the slight shift in the governance model will actually only further strengthen it. And although I did not go into great depth in terms of reading, I certainly did read the reports that gave the highlights, the points, et cetera, but I didn't read the full report. But looking at both reports that I did read, I also see a number of people who are part of those decisions, those recommendations, and they're people for whom I have high regard. We have John Jack, not far from here. We have the mayor of Duncan. We have, representation up and down the coast. And so I feel like, well, we're in good hands if they're coming forward with this recommendation, following up on that independent review. So for all of those reasons, I would like to support this.
Thank you. And Councillor Wood, please.
Thanks, Mayor. Question through yourself to staff. Does staff feel like this is more operational or political, this letter of support?
But, yeah.
I mean, if they're not answering, I'm going to guess political, but I'm not in the room, so.
We're going to say staff are neutral on that position.
Okay.
Okay.
Sure. It's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Martin.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've heard everyone speak here, and I really will say that I support this. I'm thinking, why haven't we had something to do with First Nations sooner? Myself personally, I've wondered, because we're into our last part of our term. And this is a way to show them that we really support them in this particular subject here. So that's the way I was thinking. So I'm just sharing that with you. It's from me personally.
Last part of our turn. We're just getting started.
I've been
Rob,
waiting.
your shirt's on fire.
Yeah, right.
There we go. Okay, thank you very much, Council. Seeing no further comments, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. All those opposed? Councillor Fraz is opposed. Thank you very much. That passes. We have next for correspondence from the next piece of correspondence from Mayor O'Brien. Regarding the response to the water supply inquiry, I sent that out anyways in advance. Anyways, we feel it's important anyways that we have it on the agenda. So because we have many inquiries coming through, and we would like to be in full communication with our community, and this is hopefully will achieve that partially. So do I have a mover or second for the recommendation for the correspondence be received for information? Moved by Councillor Fraz, seconded by Councillor Beal. Any further questions, comments, or discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. The carries unanimous. The first report on the agenda is regarding the Director of Community Planning and Building Zoning Amendment application at 104 Lee Avenue. The presentation that we just had to consider zoning and development bylaw amendment. Do I have a mover or a seconder for the recommendations as noted, please? Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Beal. Any further discussion or questions? Councillor Gore, go ahead.
Yes, thank you through you, Mayor, to our staff. If they can clarify one thing, I read on page 23 of the agenda when it talks about the density, all big numbers, 40 units. 99 dwelling units per hectare, because this is a mixed use designation. So how does this actually change from RS1 to SLR1 when SLR1 only allows either single family dwellings or duplexes? I understand the calculation is based on hectare of what is designated in the OCP. If we are changing the zoning specific to SLR1, the use is very specific to what can be built. So how can there be higher density than just a single family or a duplex?
Go ahead, CEO Taylor, if you would, please.
I'm not sure I understand the question, so I'll try to answer it. But so with an SLR zone, the minimum parcel size is smaller, so you can fit more units on the same hectare of land. So that is a higher density. There's also other things in the SLR. So the duplex being allowed as 2 primary residents, and then there's different configurations, different setbacks. So it's kind of like a scaled down version of the RS1 zone. So in order to have the subdivision happen on this property, the minimum parcel size needs to be less than 560, which is what an RS1 zone is. And then the density per hectare is just based on obviously like the block. So I don't know if that addresses the question.
Yes, thank you. I know staff likes to give us a big overview of what the density can be, but realistically, I don't think that will happen. I don't think I'm approving 37 dwelling units potentially in the future on this lot, is all I'm saying. Yes, thank you.
If I might just clarify, no, it's not on this lot, but it would be on a hectare of land with that zone.
Great. Any further comments on the application? Seeing none, all those in favor? That carries unanimous. Thank you. That carries. The next report is from the Director of Community Planning and Building, a regional context statement to review the regional context statement contained within the city's official community plan as required under legislation. Do I remove or second for the recommendations as noted? Moved by Councillor Gore, seconded by Councillor Martin. Any further discussion on the recommendations? Councillor Gore, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Can staff please clarify that once we have a revised OCP, and I think it's in the report, but if you could please provide an answer to this, that a new statement will be provided once we have a revised OCP to the RDN, correct?
Yes,
CEO Kaler, if you would,
Yeah.
please.
that is correct.
Yeah, thank you. Is it possible in the new statement to include our land use interfacing with the RDN properties? I think it will be important to see in the future how our OCP, since we are surrounded by these RDN properties, I would love to see a plan, even in the statement as well, that we will respect this transition from the RDN towards the city. So would like to see that. Please, thank you.
Go ahead, CEO.
Thank you. So we'd have to check, I'd have to remind myself of the specific requirements for the context statement, but there certainly could be that concept in the OCP for sure. So it could be, if you remember in our current OCP, we have a section on principles or guiding principles for lands adjacent to single family. So that could be a very similar section, but we'd have to just double check at the time when the bylaw is being adopted, if that would fit in the context statement or just in another part of the OCP, but no problem with addressing that concept in the OCP that I can see.
You okay? Good, thank you. Any further comments? All those in favor? Thank you. Carries unanimous. Thank you. The next report is from the Manager Engineering and Manager of Parks, the 2026 Community Civil Works Tender Award toward a combined construction contract for 2 separate projects, the construction of a public parking lot at 149 Stanford Avenue East, Project A, and the removal and replacement of the multi-sport structure in the Community Park, Project B, which for all those not in the know, that's the lacrosse box area. And so we are now at that stage to award the tender. So do I have a mover or seconder for the recommendations? Moved by Councillor Beal, seconded by Councillor Gore. Any further discussion? Go ahead. Well, here, I'll just jump in first then. You can't make up your mind. I'd just like to give my appreciation to staff for bringing this to our attention and actually to the table for tender at this time. It's been a long time coming, and there's been a lot of back and forth of what's happening and funding arrangements and everything else. And staff have been able to get this project in time, which was before the end of our term, as well as on budget or under budget in this case as well. And so my appreciation of the staff and the effort to actually make this happen while we're still at the table. And I appreciate it. And the community is going to be very pleased to see this happening. We get inquiries daily on when we're going to make the improvements. And so I'm looking forward to these projects breaking ground. So thank you to staff. Councillor Beale, go ahead first.
And in a similar vein, I was just wanted to say how pleased I am to see that this has come forward, and I know that there will be great appreciation and great use of both facilities. So that's great.
Yes, and speaking of that, Councillor Beale, making note of the fact that the lacrosse box facility is definitely multi-use. You know, we have the lacrosse individuals in there. We have the basketball people that use it. We have street hockey, and we also have pickleballers use it. So it's definitely a case of a well-used space on the park. So I'm appreciation for all the support we're going to get for all of those individual groups. Councillor Martin. I know.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And of course, I'm very short anyway, it doesn't matter. What it is for me, the parking is a big deal.
Yes.
Up until recently, because I'm not the liaison for the PDBA, and I see there's not that I see any from here, from our meeting here, but I hear them all the time, and we've heard this all along about parking. But then in my case, I come downtown and do my stuff, and never have I had a problem parking up until this year. So I think the timing is excellent, and I'm going to hope that some of the staff that are in the city here and in the little town downtown will use that, so the customers can then park, because I'm a customer too. So that's a big deal as far as I'm concerned. Lacrosse, the sports, excellent. So this is a good news. Thank you. Thank you, staff, for getting this in done now.
Point well taken, Councillor Martin. I appreciate your comments as well. It's a very short walk in a big city. This is a very short walk to get to parking to your employment. So it is definitely a step in the right, well, not too many steps in the right direction. So thank you, Councillor Gore. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, add on my appreciation to staff for the efficiency and the cost savings on this project, for combining the two. I have two questions. One about, I think, Kiva, we spoke briefly on the pickleball repainting. Would this be included in this work order, or is it separate?
CEO Kayla, go ahead, please.
Thank you. If I may, through you, they're separate contracts because it's a different surface. And that project is in the budget, in the work plan, and is slated for commencing in May. However, the caveat on that is it's weather dependent. So if it's a very wet May, it might have to wait. And I believe we do, just to follow up on the question we also talked about, we do have the commitment from the pickleball users for a $20,000 contribution to that project.
Correct.
And I believe finance is working to prepare the invoice for them per their request for that.
Perfect. Thank you. Yes, yes, the group has reached out to me, and they're willing to contribute. My second question, if I may.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I was looking at page 68 of the report, and it talks about the annual ongoing maintenance costs. Can you clarify why the two very different facilities, one, the multi-use court, is going to cost $10,000, and a parking lot with hopefully permeable surface is also going to cost $10,000 a year for maintenance? Is that just a guesstimate, or? Thank you.
CEO Kaler.
Thank you. If I may, through you, Mr. Mayor, yeah, it's basically an estimate based on labor in large part. Some of it is materials, but when you add space, then it has to get put into the maintenance schedule. Right now, we're really not doing anything on that parking area, so there will have to be inspections. There will have to be possibly, although I doubt it would be high enough on the priority list to get snow clearing, but things like that. And then, of course, there will be plantings at that spot, so that will require annual maintenance. And then with the lacrosse box, there's things like painting or maintenance of the equipment or the fencing or anything like that, or the basketball hoops, whatever it may be, but also mandated inspections are required. So it's a lot of that is going to be staff time, probably 70% of it would be time and the rest could be materials needed for the maintenance.
Good with that? Thank you. Great. Any further comment? Councillor Wood, did you have your hand up or was that, oh, are you okay?
I did, but I'm okay, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments? All those in favor? Thank you. Carries unanimous. Mrs. Holmes, would you please provide your presentation regarding the proposed amendments to the 2026 to 2030 financial plan, including latest tax roll, property tax, and utility rates? Welcome, Mrs. Holmes.
Good afternoon. Here we are again.
Yes.
Just gonna get set up here. Okay, this is our first meeting with respect to the amended financial plan, looking at changes to the financial plan that was adopted by council in January. And typically the changes that come as part of this amendment are just brand new information or adjustments as of the year end that was information that were estimates when we prepared the financial plan last fall, as well as adjusting for carry forward amounts for projects that were in progress over the year end. We would expect to have one more amended financial plan this fall. As we're heading into an election year, we typically don't do our full process for the budget in the fall. We would move that into the new year with the new council. So we'll have another amendment this fall is the expectation. This year, as we'll go through at this meeting and the next one, there aren't any really significant changes or new information. It's really more about adjusting the estimates that were made by staff last fall and also going through the revised roll from BC assessment. Just to review our timeline then for this process, this is the first of two meetings where we'll get into the details a little bit. The second being the committee of the whole meeting next Monday, April 13th. And then April 20th would be carrying forward any resolutions from council at the committee of the whole for just a revisit on the 20th and carried forward. What that would result in, if there aren't any further changes, is that at our May 4th meeting is the meeting when we have all the finance reports and all the finance bylaws. And if you recall, that's typically the financial plan bylaw, the tax rates bylaw, and then the water and sewer rates bylaws, as well as related reports. And as you likely know, the community charter requires that those bylaws are all approved before May 15th. And so we'll work towards that and have one more meeting before May 15th to adopt those if they're all straightforward to you on May the 4th. Public consultation has been ongoing through this process through social media and our Let's Talk Parksville site. And we've had some feedback and we'll try and incorporate those questions into our presentations. We also have in your calendars an extra meeting if needed on April the 27th, if there's more that needs to be discussed. Just as a reminder, the types of amendments that might come forward are resolutions that council has made since the last financial plan till today. And so we'll bring those forward to you to confirm that those have been incorporated as amendments into the financial plan. Brand new items that weren't known at the time of the financial plan. I think we only have one small grant that is brand new, but nothing more significant than that. And then just the new and updated information that I made reference to. Our process is the same as any other financial process. We have our meetings, we go through it as well as the public consultation as required by legislation. Looking at the revised roll from BC assessment, which we typically receive March the 31st, this is the roll that we usually base the property tax rates on, and it's considered final by the BC assessment. There are supplementary assessments through the year, but this is the one on which our property tax rates are based. A few things to note. Within the chart, you can see the prior year's comparative 2025 revised roll. And there's a significant increase, $180 million from last year's roll. 71 million of that is non-market change, meaning that about 110 million is just general market change in if no other home had been built or new inventory in Class 1 residential. we would still have had 110 million of just general market change. The non-market change, though, gives a rough indication of new property assessment on which we can apply property taxes. So that's typically kind of a bit of a gauge of the growth in the assessment base. So you'll see a total of $80 million total non-market change, some of which is in business class 6, 8 million, and 71 million in residential. Also, the comparative number along the bottom row is the comparison to what we based our estimates on in the fall financial plan. So you can see that the preview roll in the fall was $17 million higher than what the revised and final roll is. And so what we'll talk about on Monday is how that impacted our property taxes. And just because the assessment base has dropped doesn't always mean that the property taxes would drop, because the case that happened here is that you'll note that our non-market change actually increased from the fall. And so the overall effect is that our property taxes are slightly higher than the estimate in the fall, not enough that we would change the proposed rate at this time.
If I may, Mrs. Holmes, just a comment on that regarding the BC assessment. Are actually concluded like in July of the year previous. And that, so this is actually like, I'm looking at the non-market at 80,471. That amount there would continue to be reflected in the July to going fiscal year, July to December would still be further increases that would be expected, but that will be reflected in the next one in July of 27. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Because I know that there's quite a bit more in the ground right now, or coming out of the ground, but that will be reflected not until the 27 assessment rates.
Right.
Thank you.
There is a lag, and that on the one hand, we wish we could capture that second 6 months. On the other hand, I think BC assessment is one of the highest standards with respect to assessments in Canada. So I think the cost of that is we get that extremely better accuracy than a lot of other assessing organizations, because we've got that 6 months to really fine tune that. So I think it's worth, and once you get in the cycle, well, we capture that part. But yeah, BC standard holds, or BC assessment holds a very high standard in that.
I agree with that statement 100%. Any other questions regarding the assessment at this time, Council, while we have the slide up? Okay.
One more comment I'll make more for our public is that the total change being 3.25% over last year is not indicative of what the property tax increase would be. And this is a source of confusion sometimes at this time of year when we're talking about rates that are in our financial plan, rates that are in BC assessment. BC assessment just provides the base on which we apply our property tax rates. And in our calculations, we apply to what was there last year, and then we look at what's new. And so this is only indicative of the growth in that base and not necessarily what any one taxpayer will pay or see a change in their rates. With respect to Class 1 residential, what I would like to point out in trying to assess what is an average property in Parksville is becoming more complex than it has in the past. We used to have a much higher proportion of single family dwellings. And now what we're seeing, and you see it in our growth downtown, is a lot more strata units. And so the average number sometimes is somewhere in the middle and doesn't really apply to anyone. And so just providing this analysis, you'll see along the top section are the single family homes. And in 2026, there's 4,302 occurrences of that type of Class 1 residential. The average increase based on the financial plan that has been adopted would be about $188. However, if we look at the strata units in Class 1 residential, there's 2,100 of those. So half the number of single family dwellings, but enough to start to impact the averages as we look at it. And so you'll see that their increase year over year would only be about $65. When we look at all of class one, their increase year over year, the average increase would be about 164, which really isn't indicative of either, but it just goes to show that our average used to be much easier to calculate and was often more applicable to more property owners, where now there's a real mix of these properties. And so I think going forward, I'll start to provide council those two comparatives, because it is difficult when you just look at the average of all the units. I think it doesn't really give a good sense, and perhaps taxpayers can look at which of those two categories are they closer to give them a rough number on that.
Councillor Wood, go ahead.
I just wanted to say a quick thanks to Jetta and staff for that little bit of context on the slide previous. You know, you could probably really get down into the minutia of the different types of housing, but I like how we have it broken down: residential properties and strata, you know, kind of single family and strata. Single family could be rental as well as own or have a mortgage on it. Strata could be rental or as well own and have a mortgage on it. Really appreciate the dollar increase. People talk about percentages, especially with regards to property tax increase. And I think the context of a dollar amount really helps it helps our property taxpayers and our residents understand you know, what they're getting into for the next year. And it's a little bit of extra work for yourself, Jetta, and for your team, but I just wanted to just thank you, because that extra context, I think it really helps shape the numbers in the residents' minds.
Councillor, are you reaching for your mic or not? Are you okay? Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Jetta. I really like the breakdown for the class one properties here. I see the next slide, so I know it's not there. So is it possible to get one for the class six and the light industry? So we as council can get an idea. I know we're not seeing as much growth in those categories. You know, personally, I would like us to diversify our tax base and see all those categories grow in a healthy manner. So we are not just taxing residential properties, but yeah, have more of a variety. Thank you.
Through the mayor, we can try and provide some analysis. What we see in class six is the variety of sizes of businesses are so wide that an average is even more challenging than here. But I'll take a look at the numbers this year, because maybe we could kind of provide it in groups of values or something like that, and try and pull that out a little bit for you. But that is the challenge with anytime we get beyond residential, is the variability and the evaluations there is really significant. But we'll see what we can do and see if we can't bring some of that forward.
And yeah, and thank you for that as well. I think the common denominator would be something like, for the class six anyways, is like all those at an average in the industrial park.
Mm-hmm.
Then that's going to be a little easier to form that average as compared to all just businesses that's throughout the rest of the community. The industrial park is our largest, obviously, industrial area anyways, where a lot of the growth is happening now as well. So that would be helpful, because a lot of those people are watching, you know, their taxes very much, because they're trying to stay in business too. So that would be helpful information, Jenna. Yeah, that's
Great. I'll see what I can pull out of that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any further questions? Carry on, Jenna. Thank you.
Okay. I also just wanted to remind council, this is essentially our ending point at our last financial plan process and our starting point for this process. And where we ended was at a 6.77 or 6.8% tax increase, water rates and sewer rates with 6% increases. And a reminder that 6.8 breaks down to a 5.3% increase in our kind of operations and minor capital. And then the 1.5% is going directly into reserves and accumulates year by year. And we'll have a little bit more analysis on reserves. So I find it useful to start looking at our comparatives to some of our other local or other municipalities in the province, is that it is really interesting to look at, okay, what's the percentage that's going directly to reserves? Because more and more municipalities are making that a part of their annual property tax increase, as everyone is trying to do their best on infrastructure renewals. So we'll try and continue to present it like this so that council understands what's that number that's really looking at the operations of the city.
Just on that one thought, and your comment says, is this a fairly common occurrence now in British Columbia municipalities that they're building, like as part of their tax increase, like creating that reserve? Is it, we're all trying to avoid Calgary.
Yes.
Not that I said that, but that's true. It is frightening to all of us. But at the same time, is that become, because the asset infrastructure management programs are identifying what there are municipal infrastructure deficits that may be there that have to be saved for at this particular time. This is more prudent to even out that tax increase over a longer period of time by creating reserves now.
Right. You're exactly right. What I would suggest is the larger municipalities in BC and across Canada started doing this maybe 12 or 13 years ago. Then it kind of moved down. I would say of our size of communities, we're probably ahead of the curve on that in terms of really providing for that strictly. What I'm seeing more of now is the property tax notices providing more detail, like breaking it down to what's RCMP, what's fire, what's reserves, so that there's an understanding, especially when we're going to have significant cost drivers. And so we've been looking at, do we start to break out RCMP on our tax notices, just so there's an understanding among residents that a big chunk of the increases that may be coming over the next few years are related to that contract change. And it helps our residents understand more why these costs are increasing. So I think that for our size of municipalities, I think we're making really good progress on reserves. The larger ones have been doing it for a long time, but I think we're doing really well in that regard.
Well, that's great. But the municipalities always have that. It's a double-edged sword because we have our municipal property taxes as well as in our case, the RDN, as well as for the electoral areas around us as well. So it's increasingly complex for our individuals. And then part of that other formula for us is the NRGH for the hospital and Nanaimo, of course, which is another entity as well, but also is going to be creating considerable tax changes anyways to our community for well-needed expansions and so forth. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Councillor Gore, you had a comment? You're okay? Any other comments? Okay, carry on. Thank you, Jetta.
Okay.
Carry on.
Again, just to summarize, we looked at what the property tax increase would be, but just to kind of turn those water and sewer use fees into dollars is about $22 for water fees and $14 for sewer. And so right now, as our starting point, it's about a $200 increase for an average residential home. And again, just noting the differences on the strata and the single family dwellings. And as part of this process, we'll start breaking those out separately. Because of course, what we're also seeing with water usage is there's less with the strata units, right, than we see with a single family dwelling with a large yard that may be irrigated. So it'll be interesting to start to look at those separately. Just to go through some of the impacts on kind of since the last financial plan, one of the obvious ones is the impacts of the province of BC's budget that was tabled in February. And so I just would like to highlight some of the changes that might be seen in our financial plan this year, but more likely next year. And what was noted in the budget without too much detail was that transfers to local governments will be reduced by about 10 million. I did confirm with the province that our small communities grant is not impacted by that. So that provides about 273, sometimes upwards of $320,000 of operating funding for us. That's just base level, goes into our budget. So I was glad that that's not being reduced. What I think we're going to see more likely is that there will be fewer capital grants available from upper levels of government. So again, another reason that our reserves will be critical as we move forward. The other big impact will be the PST being charged on a lot of professional services and including security. Now, some of it is only on 30% of the professional service gets the PST. So you can imagine the calculations of estimating what our professional services might be, then calculating 30% and applying 7%. So we're going to take that on once the province's budget is actually passed through legislation. So we'll have that as part of our fall amendment. Given it doesn't start till October 1st, I think our budgets will be able to absorb whatever it is that comes our way on that. However, the security services are at 100% at 7%. So that's where we'll see an increase that'll be noticeable because we do have a number of different places where we use security services. In looking at our potential impacts to city residents and taxpayers, which we also want to consider as we're looking at our own financial plans, I think one of the most significant that will impact a very large number of our residents is the elimination of that northern and rural homeowner benefit, because that's just $200 right off the top of their property tax bill. Last year, we had nearly 5,200 homeowner grants that likely would have claimed most of that. And so we're going to start communications on that this year so that they know that next year they're likely have $200 more to pay on that. As well as that is the change in the property tax deferment program, which I think you're aware of, but changing completely how that's calculated as well as increasing the tax rate. Since the BC budget came down, we've had a significant uptick in the number of residents coming in to sign up for our pause program, which is where they pay monthly towards their property taxes and their utilities. So instead of deferring their taxes now, they're coming in and setting themselves up on that monthly plan. So Shannon, who is our property tax clerk, was just hopping with all kinds of people coming in. So that's great. And we're glad that we offer that service because it's another way that people can manage their financial affairs. The other ones that—
If I may interrupt, yes, the pause program, I had a question relatively recently about it. So that's where the individual homeowners will come in and they'll actually put down an amount anyways towards their taxes for the following year coming up. Now, when they're putting that money in, are you investing it all wisely and giving them like 10% return like you do on everything else, or somewhere less, or is it just a flat rate?
Well, I'd like to think that we're investing it wisely, but there is a legislated interest rate that we pay on that. So it's not based on how well I do with getting a return on our investments. It's a interest rate that is provided by the province, so that everyone is paying the same.
Does it change annually, or that interest rate?
It actually changes sometimes as much as quarterly.
Really?
So, yeah.
If you could advise, what is it currently?
I don't know right off the top of my head. Yeah.
That's you and me both. So
Yeah.
I'd be just interested in that information. You know, just like, are we talking half of 1%, or are we talking 2% or something like that? That's why
Sure.
I'm unsure because people are concerned about the deferred program, and the pause is definitely going to be a factor. But if I'm going to sell it, I want to be able to sell it at for the right reasons at the right interest rate. Yeah.
Right. And just to get a plug in, we also do that for the utility bills as well. So people can pay monthly for both property taxes and utilities.
Thank you.
The other items in the budget that will probably affect fewer people but still be impactful is there is an additional school tax for properties that are $3 million higher and above with their assessment. That rate has increased. So it affects, I think, about 28 properties in Parksville, but to those people, it'll be important. As you know, the community housing fund has been closed indefinitely, and I know that that's very impactful to our community. For some people, their personal income tax rates are increasing. And that's effective this year, 2026. And then for some of our volunteer firefighters, they'll get a larger tax credit, moving from $3,000 to $6,000. That also applies to search and rescue volunteers as well. So that's the positive in all of this, but we will see residents being impacted by those other changes as well.
Thank you, Jetta. And I was just going back, I was trying to, my brain work as fast as you speak. Sometimes it doesn't happen that quickly. The additional school tax, that was what you're talking about on the assessed values and that it applies, or what, if you could explain that additional school tax again, please?
About, I think it's about 5 years ago now, the province brought in, there's school tax rates that are applied across the board. And then there is the additional school tax, which initially was for properties with assessments above $2 million. And they paid an extra percentage or so on top of the other school tax rates. Now that increase is, or the tax rate on those is even higher. And so they'll pay a little bit more extra beyond the standard school taxes.
I never knew that was happening. That's, I guess I'm not there yet.
So for most people, their school tax rates will continue as is, but it's that additional school tax rate, it's called, for those very high value properties, they pay an extra amount to the school tax.
And then you advised quickly that we, approximately how many are in our area?
I think it's about 28 that are,
28
Yeah.
at that higher rate.
right.
Good information. Thank you. Councillor Gore, go ahead. Oh, thank you for that. Councillor Wood, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Jenna, for mentioning the tax credit increase. I think the city of Parksville can be proud that that whole thing started right here in Parksville. Adam Fraz is part of previous council. I think his motion was to write a letter of support in this. The feds increased it from $3,000 to $6,000 across the country for 110,000 volunteer first responders. And now the province has matched it. It's probably one of the few shining lights in this most recent budget, but the province matched it. I was invited down for the budget presentation, and that all started in Parksville. The provincial increase affects about 9,000 volunteer first responders, which, Jetta, you're correct, firefighters, volunteer search and rescue, and also the Royal Canadian Marine Search and Rescue as well, and about 9,000 volunteers across the province. So a little plug for the province and the finance minister and our MLA. That's about as good as we want to kind of give them on the budget, but we do want to say thank you, and that all started here in Parksville, so I just want to mention it. Thanks.
Yeah, good program. Yeah. You want a letter of support? Thank you. Councillor Beal, go ahead.
Thank you. And just to add to Councillor Wood's comments, and also a shout out to our MP who did that same work, carried that forward to the federal level. So yeah,
yes,
it's all good.
Yes, MP Gord Johns, he did a lot of work on that, and actually, I was actually speaking to him just yesterday at length, anyways, over a couple of things. But yeah, he has worked hard for us. I can. Yeah, you have very good results. You're right, Councillor Beal. Thank you for that reminder. Councillor Martin, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Jetta. You explain it so well. I think the constituents, all the people that are few probably that look at it, but I can refer to what you've said and explain it easily. So thank you very much.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Okay, nothing else to say on this. Just really wanted to put that on your radar. It's going to be more impactful to next year, but just also for awareness in case you're getting questions from residents. Okay, this slide that you didn't think might be coming, depending what happens with Iran and that ongoing conflict, is that we've looked at budgets, but we have some tariffs built into the financial plan already. And we also have operating reserves. You may recall that we established a year or more ago that are for this kind of scenarios. So rather than increasing the budgets that are in the financial plan already and kind of having this false sense of security that we've estimated correctly when we really have no idea what'll happen, what I've suggested is that we'll kind of expand the use of those tariffs. And so if we're seeing fuel costs go up even more than they have already, we may use some of those tariffs to offset. If we don't have other positive budget variances that'll offset that, bring that back to council in the fall. If we need more than that, then we can use our operating reserves. What I don't want to do is increase the property tax rate based on something that is completely unpredictable to us in Parksville. We are always looking at our budgets, and I did check in with especially operations with respect to the fuel charges that we're seeing. And yeah, so if that's okay with council, we'll continue to use that. We are working proactively and early with suppliers to try and make sure that items that we have in the financial plan for 2026, we're getting started on early so that we can maybe deal with any supply chain impacts that come up. The other thing that's further to the mayor's question about investment returns, really consulting a lot with our financial advisors to try and get, okay, where is this going and what is our best kind of time frame for investment, as well as making sure we have cash flow available. And then, yeah, just continuing to use those operating reserves to offset some of the negative budget variances that we may see, rather than kind of increase based on just estimates that we really don't know. But I will provide one example of one supplier has an 18% surcharge right now.
Right.
Yeah. So we're seeing that on these new invoices, they're coming with fuel surcharges. So that's not nothing. So we'll see how that goes.
The price of oil dropped today.
Yay.
Yeah, it did. So
We'll
but I
wait
don't-
till
yeah.
our friend below sees.
Unfortunately, the gas pump, it raises instantly and it drops very slowly.
Right.
So, but it went in the right direction today. So.
I always like to remind council of some of the things that we don't yet have in the financial plan in terms of certain numbers, and that's some of the findings and costs related to studies that we have underway. The drinking water study, we've received that first phase feedback, but there's all kinds of things that we may contemplate going forward. The asset management program, as you know, we're keeping that moving forward. And so more and more we'll be able to provide council not only with other asset management plans, but fine tuning the estimates that are included in those as we build our programs on that. And then just looking at that analysis of long-term financial impacts of renewal and replacement of facilities, which we haven't done yet. And we know that that'll be a significant one that we'll need to start to look at building reserves around. The BC government right now is also forecasting Parksville's population over 15,000 this year. And so I think it's good that we've started to contemplate that RCMP contract increase. But we'll wait for the census. Maybe we'll slide under for one more census. But I think all the estimates that the Director of Planning and I are seeing is that we will have passed it this year. So we'll continue to plan for that and look for direction on that, especially next year as to how we fund that. Can you take me back one, Amanda? Thanks. I wanted to, before we get into too many details about the financial plan next year, really revisit how we're using reserves now that we've had a few years of building those reserves and having them established. And further to what the mayor commented, I think that while around the province, we're seeing many municipalities having very significant property tax increases because they're having to respond to infrastructure failures or just general renewal and replacement that they haven't provided for. We continue, I think, to keep a pretty even keel on this. And so I just wanted to understand, or for you to understand how it is that we approach the funding of various projects, especially capital. And that is that we always try to use the restricted grant funding first. So it either has a time limitation or a type of project limitation. So if we've got capital projects, we say, okay, can we use gas tax or growing communities fund, those ones that need to be spent? The other thing then is to look at, are there other opportunities out there for grants? And right now there aren't a lot of opportunities. So it's good that we have reserves and can continue to do our infrastructure renewal. The other thing is to look at what reserves do we have? We have some operating reserves that can be used for minor capital projects. We have capital reserves both in our asset management and infrastructure reserves, as well as our general capital reserves. So it gives council some options with respect to funding. I think because of this, we're not going to see the wild fluctuations where we have catastrophic failures. I'm going to go through some of the balances with you today that are unaudited, but just so we can have an idea of what we're using in the financial plan and how we've been planning that out with respect to infrastructure renewal. So in terms of building the reserves program, before 2019, we didn't really have any systematic contributions to reserves. Not that we didn't have reserves, it just wasn't kind of a systematic percentage of property taxes. So there wasn't an ability to do a long-term financial plan with capital, knowing that those funds would be there. And so in 2019, when we were commissioning the water treatment plant, we started collecting this $20 water treatment plant reserve fee from every folio in the water fund annually. And so that started to build a small reserve for renewal projects in the water treatment plant. That was our first foray into kind of very specific reserves. In 2021, Council of the Day resolved to add 0.5% to property taxes every year as a contribution to the general fund capital reserve. Initially, it was for a 3-year commitment, and then this council continued it indefinitely. In 2022, we started making contributions to the water treatment plant reserve through the ERWS joint venture. And so that again started to really increase the amounts available for those capital projects. That was also the year that we adopted a funding envelope amount, where the amount of capital in a year would be limited basically to what the staff of the time could deliver, which was around $4 million. And so that changed how our financial plan looked and how we could plan for that capital renewal in a very systematic way. In 2023, we started contributing that funding envelope amount to the asset management infrastructure renewal reserve, such that those amounts could be accumulated for a number of years to deliver very significant infrastructure projects. And we'll go through a couple of charts that'll show how we did that to prepare for the next couple of years, which have very significant capital expenditures. And then in 2025, this council resolved to add 0.5% to the property tax rates for contributions to water and sewer funds capital reserves. And again, that was a sure way that we could start to build those reserves, because it is difficult to do systematic increases, although there are some within the water user and sewer user fees, but it's an unpredictable revenue source. And so it helps to be able to do it that way. As you know, we're also doing a contribution to the Protective Services Reserve of 0.5%, and that was increased for 2026. So that's kind of the timeline. So in a very short time, you'll see that we've put in place a methodology where we can plan for that infrastructure renewal much easier, which, by the way, as a requirement of the gas tax fund amounts, we have to tie a long-term financial plan and our asset management planning together by 2030. So we're getting closer to that. This chart shows the infrastructure renewal reserves. So that's the accumulation of that funding envelope amount, which started at about $4 million across all 3 funds, but then was indexed to a construction index. And so that amount increases each year. But a couple things I'd like you to note. One is the brighter blue line is the balance in those 3 funds. And you'll notice from 23 to 25, there's a significant increase. And so we're up to about $14 million by the end of 2025. And what that sets us up for is that in 2026 through 2028, we have 3 pretty significant infrastructure projects. One is Stanford Avenue, one is Jensen Avenue, and the other is the Alberni Sidewalk. And to give you some idea, the Stanford Avenue total cost will be about $10.3 million over 3 years. And it's being funded $8.7 million by these infrastructure reserves, with the remainder mostly DCCs. Jensen Avenue is $8.2 million over 3 years, funded completely by these infrastructure reserves. And then the Alberni sidewalk is $2.3 million and funded by about 900,000 of infrastructure, with most of the balance by DCCs. So you can see that by having that regular tax increase through our infrastructure reserves over these last number of years has set us up to very efficiently deliver these infrastructure projects over basically 24 months, but it spans 3 years in our financial plan. And we don't have a great big tax increase in the next 2 years to fund this, right? And so I hope that that helps to illustrate really how these can be used effectively without having the significant peaks and valleys in our property tax rates in order to efficiently do our infrastructure renewal.
Thank you. Councillor, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Jenna, I'm quite impressed, obviously, by the prudent financial planning that's being demonstrated through these slides, and also the contributions, how we are contributing to these major infrastructure projects, partly through DCCs, partly through those reserves. We always talk about the generational equity and all that. So I think it just makes sense that some of it being funded by growth, some of it being funded by those property taxes. So I really appreciate this clear demonstration of the importance that people can see and the council can actually appreciate of creating those reserves, and these are paying off those dividends, like for these very, very important projects that our community has been asking for since we ran in 2022. I know a lot of people have been asking about Stanford, Alberni Highway sidewalk. So it's good to see these finally coming to realization in a very, very fiscally prudent manner. Thank you, Jenna.
Great, thank you for that. I think one of the things that it also helps is obviously we're creating a financial plan with council's resolutions to build these reserves, but it gives engineering then the tools to build out a plan, knowing that there's funding in place. And so we're currently working on a very long-term, like up to 20 years capital plan. And our consultants are able to say, okay, here's the funding that is provided in the financial plan. We can build something that matches that and based on risks and priorities and all kinds of things. So the engineering takes this and runs with that in terms of their planning. So I would suggest that before 2030, we're going to have those two tied together in terms of the long-term financial plan and our asset management plans. And I'm not saying that this is necessarily enough to fund everything we need, but it's sure going a long way in terms of being able to plan for it and for us to be able to advise council on what amounts we might need more or how we're doing on this. And I think this is just a snapshot of how we've been able to prepare for these significant projects over the next couple of years.
Yeah, thank you for that, Jed, and following up with Councillor Gore's comments, recognizing the fact that the Alberni Highway sidewalk is now the list is to a planned capital plan for next year. And the fact that you mentioned that that was funded mostly through DCCs. And we have a lot of comments, as council's noticed, the fact that we have a fair bit of development going on in the city, and we do charge quite satisfactory DCCs, and the comments are like they should be paying for those developers should be paying for all these capital projects. And I always reply that that's exactly what they do with the DCCs. And here's an example. This is a hard example of Alberni Highway has never had a sidewalk. With all the increased development, of course, we recognize the fact that people are using that corridor as an active transportation area. And they need safer transportation routes, and this is happening. And it was the developers that have actually paid for it. So not only allowing for more population to live and enjoy Parksville and work, live, and play, as we say, but at the same time, they're going to be in a better community that's going to be safer for them as well, which has always been the priority, I know, to this council as well, to being very for not just accessibility, but for active transportation routes that makes for a better community. And if the DCCs makes that happen, that's great. So that's an example right away. So I'm very excited about that because I get a lot of calls on that highway. The other part I wanted to mention is that the capital projects that are identified by our operations and engineering department a lot of those are graded or have a report card and condition, like we recently had, I believe it was 2 years ago now, where we had the pavement assessment done throughout the city when council, you were all here, we approved that funding to have that all done. And now that's come back with a report card on what we have for the pavement assessments. And it's new technology that they were able to use. And now our engineering take that and is evaluate on what, what must be done, what will be done, and what somewhere in the future will be done. And that's what we're going to see over the next 10 years. And so that's made us much more efficient to take care of that infrastructure before it actually gets to where it fails, and which costs an awful lot more, because in the case of Stanford, as you know, we're not just doing the pavement, we're doing all the infrastructure, and the pipes and valves and everything that's in the ground underneath it is all done at the same time. So there's economies of scale built in here. And so it's a lot of money. Yes, it is. But at the same time, we're renewing that infrastructure that's under the street, as well as creating new pavement. So it's not just a single process, it's a multiple process. And so the staff have identified what needs doing, so we don't have disaster. So thank you for that. Councillor Gore, go ahead.
It's a quick question, if I may. Thank you, Mayor. Jenna, I'm looking at this green line with the interest income. I wonder if staff has looked at different options that we can get a bit higher interest in. Like the reason I bring it up is I think we have millions of dollars. Even if a portion of it is invested, I'm guessing this is GICs on a fixed term, but somewhere, if we anticipate our projects to be medium to long term, I wonder if that portion of that and some of the investment could go into a higher earning investment options. Thank you.
Through the mayor, thank you for your question. So I'm actually thinking we're doing okay on the interest. It does end up looking like a very low line based on the values of the others, but a couple of thoughts on that. And that's why I did comment on the previous slide about really consulting with our investment advisors, in that the yield curve is all over the place. And sometimes we're getting much higher rates to invest shorter term, and the longer terms are actually lower. Sometimes it's the other way around, but what all of this is allowing us to do, and the long-term capital plan will allow us to do, is say, we don't need this money for 10 years. And so there are some products available through the MFA that are 10-year and longer. And so once I'm reluctant to start investing in that term until we really have some good plans in front of us, because it's there for the term. And we use a number of different products in terms of trying to invest following our investment policy, which to some degree limits what we can get into. So the investment advisors that we work with are used to dealing with municipalities and what's restricted by legislation. We provide them with our own investment policy as well. And so to some degree, we're limited, but we try and get creative. And yeah, the MFA has some products that once we've got that longer term plan, then we'll try and kind of take advantage of that a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, risk assessment, right? Yeah,
Right.
That's what we're all about here. So yeah. So those of us that have been here a little longer have gone through that, and we've lived through that, and sometimes always not with great results. So I appreciate Jetta, because I can tell you her investment knowledge is much stronger than us at the table, and I looked at the rates as well, and I thought, wow, I wish I could get that, but
Yeah.
anyways, thank you.
This chart just shows, the previous chart was just our infrastructure reserves. This is our total capital reserves, and it shows a similar kind of build and drop down, but just to give you some idea of where we are in our total. This shows it by fund though, rather than in total. So you can see our general reserves are higher than our water and sewer, which makes sense. We have roads and infrastructure and facilities, much more capital asset base in the general fund than in water and sewer. But you'll see that one of the things I have been focusing on is building those water reserves, because we know there's infrastructure needs likely coming on that. And so as well as just the investment in the water treatment plant, yes, was only in 2019 and it was new then, but eventually it'll need to get replaced someday. And if we can start to put small amounts away now, then that'll leave council of that day with better decision-making options. In addition to amounts that are contributed from property taxes and user fees, as you know, we have some significant capital grants as well. And I just wanted to highlight for council what we have been allocating those to with your approval, as well as what amounts are still unallocated. And these are ones that are somewhat limited in the scope of eligible categories, as well as time in that it needs to be spent by a certain time. So the first is our gas tax, or Canada Community Building Fund. I don't think it's been called gas tax for many years, but everyone still calls it gas tax because that's a whole lot easier. But at the beginning of 2024, we had about 4.7 million. In 2025, we received another approximately $700,000 and then allocated amounts to the Transportation Master Plan and the Beach Fest relocation, as well as that PLC upgrades, which is across all of our utilities. And that's about a 3-year project. So the amount in 2025 was about $73,000. In the 26 to 2030 financial plan, we have the allocations that are noted there, with the most significant being the fire hall upgrades, as well as various water projects over that term. 100,000 to the Parksville Pathway. One of the things that the this grant allows for is like capacity building. So it doesn't have to be purely capital, but you can do things like planning documents, asset management programs, things like that, which it's very nice to have a grant that can pay for some of those things. Because as you know, the master plans and such aren't inexpensive, and to absorb those from our property taxes is more challenging. So we've typically funded most of the infrastructure master plans out of gas tax. And then there are upgrades scheduled to the skate park for 2027. The 750,000 is half of the estimated amount. And what we're looking for is recreation grants or perhaps fundraising that might be the other half of that. So council hasn't necessarily approved that going ahead for sure. It's still subject to funding. So at the end of 2030, we have about 1.8 million unallocated still.
Okay, thank you. I didn't let her finish her sentence. Yeah. You get Councillor Bill, go ahead.
Thank you. And through to Jetta, thank you very much. I was curious about the Parks and Trails Master Plan in there. Now, can you refresh my memory? Was this discussed, or are we talking about a new or a revised plan, or is this around implementation of items that have come out of the plan? Because as I recall, it wasn't that long ago that the plan was done, but
I think it was done in 2017, and we typically have our master plans in the financial plan on about a 10-year rotation. And as they come into kind of the 5-year plan, staff takes a look and says, okay, is it in need of update? Do we push it out a little bit more? So it isn't in 2026, but it's out. That's everything that was in those 5 years. Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate the comment as well, Councillor Bill, because I remember the community park master plan. And we, previous Councillor Press and I were there, you know, we're looking at this master plan often, and then we had recommendations of things to get done. And it always seemed to just get pushed back to the back burner type of thing because of, we didn't receive, you know, enough of the gas tax or something like that to go to it. And then I think if we're going to be doing another one, and, you know, my plan for the new plan is just look at the old plan, you know, like, you know, really, there's 150 grand for a plan, so at least. So anyways, I understand what you're saying, but 10 years happens pretty quickly, apparently. So thank you for that, Jenna.
Okay. The other significant capital reserve we have that is funded outside of property taxes is the Growing Communities Fund. And if you recall, we received about $4.8 million in 2023. And it has 5 years to be spent. So it needs to be spent by March of 2028. You can see what we've got allocations for coming up in that. We did do a very large chunk of the asphalt and crack ceiling budget out of this, 716,000, which again meant we didn't use our reserves for that, which allowed some more building in our own reserves. And this is what I mean by, okay, do we have other grants that we can use before we use our own reserves to allow those to continue to build? In the upcoming 5-year financial plan, and it's only in the next 2 years because we've only got till March 2028 to spend it. The balance of the drinking water plan, if you recall, 750,000 of this funding was allocated to the drinking water plan. Downtown lighting of 300,000, fire hall upgrades, and then the lacrosse multi-sport court that we just, council looked at the approval of that today, is being funded from Growing Communities Fund. So there's still $259,000 unallocated, and we'll leave that there for now. What I would suggest is that in our fall amendment, we might want to look at how did all of those other projects come in? Were they under the budget, and are there other projects that could be funded by this? Just so that we can make sure it's allocated and spent by that time frame. And staff has been looking for projects within those eligible categories. This one is very strictly capital. And so we're looking for things that meet those eligibility categories. In addition to those capital reserves, we have some other mostly operating reserves, and I just am bringing this to council's information so that you have an awareness of that after we established all of those reserves last year. But the Protective Services Reserve at the end of 2025 had $1.3 million, and the RCMP Reserve had 2.15. And that will likely be increased when we bring the audited financial statements back to you and do that allocation of any surpluses from 2025. These reserves are mostly funded, with the exception of the statutory reserves, by that allocation of surplus, which means we're not increasing property taxes for that, but it does allow us to put some money aside for unexpected or unplanned expenditures. And this again really allows council opportunities to manage that property tax rate in years where there may be significant increases in expenditures or drops in revenue. As you know, 2027 could be one of those years. We're seeing significant increases from the RDN with respect to wastewater. We might have our RCMP increase. And so as part of next year's financial plan, we'll bring back some possible strategies to deal with those, and perhaps using the operating reserves to help kind of smooth that increase out a little bit. With respect to our future expenditures reserve, we also keep in there any operating grants that we receive. So for example, we have the local government climate action program grant, and that one has to be spent by the end of 2027. And so as part of the amended financial plan, we'll bring that to your attention as to where it's been allocated, including in some operating accounts where we're doing things like habitat restoration or work in the wetlands to remove invasive species and things like that. Our financial stabilization reserve includes kind of the recurring expenditures that only come up every number of years. Things like master plans, elections, insurance deductibles, things like that. And so putting some money aside there to offset the increase that would be required in the year that it occurs. So for example, we have an election happening this year. There's expenditures related to the election. We've put money aside, a small amount each year, into the financial stabilization reserve, and then that funds the election expenditures over the next couple of years. And so again, we don't see that spike in the property tax rates related to those amounts.
If I have a question here, Jetta, if I may, looking at the financial stabilization reserves at 1.1 million for the water fund, and then coming up as the future expenditure reserves for saying 200,000, 200,000 anyways for the water fund. So that's planned for like to come out of that 1.1. We have an expenditure, an expense of 200,000. And could you explain what that would be?
Yeah. The financial stabilization reserve, in our reserves policy, we try to have an amount as expressed as a percentage of the revenues in those funds. So in the general fund, it's expressed as 0.5% to 2% of property taxes we have in the financial stabilization reserve. So for example, if there was a year where there was significant increase in expenditures and you didn't want to increase the property taxes by as much as we might need to do, you could pull some of that money in from the operating reserve to basically offset the property tax required. So for example, when the RCMP expenditures increase as we expect, we can pull in from the protective services reserve to maybe smooth the impact of that increase. Similarly, we can do that for water user fees. So we've got a percentage of water user fees that we're building to be basically a bit of a buffer on unexpected revenue losses or increases in expenditures. And so that's the amount that's in the water fund. So it's not tied to a specific expenditure yet, but our policy defines the maximum amount. So once we've reached that, then we wouldn't do that. We wouldn't allocate any more surplus to that.
Okay, if I can ask then on the DCCs that we charge, anyways, we haven't broken out all to the different areas and the DCCs for each category, like for water fund and the DCCs. Is that reflected in the stabilization reserve or is that reflected in the operating?
DCC reserves are completely different.
Right.
They're not in these numbers at all.
Right.
But yes, they are on the financial plan broken out, or sorry, in our financial statements broken out into type.
Right.
Yeah.
And so then my question is going in this direction, can council then allocate the voluntary amenity charges that we ask for many developments and so forth? If we were to ask them to, instead of contributing to the general fire department and so forth, that could we actually direct that voluntary amenity to a water reserve fund of some sort?
Yes, I believe you could, because currently when they give to the fire department, we transfer the amount into the protective services reserve for fire.
Right. And so what would be the process for council to make that decision that we perhaps look at all the development that's going on and add an amenity charge, voluntary, of course, and to be dedicated to the water fund? And how would we make sure that it actually got allocated to the water fund and didn't get picked up and built the new RCMP station? I'm just saying.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Is that it actually is for future say water capital cost improvements to our water system. How would we do that?
A couple of comments and then I'm going to refer to Kiva, but council did decide not to do an amenity contribution bylaw similar to the DCC. So I think I'll let Kiva address that more and see if there's other ways we would do that.
Yeah, I would be working with planning and would probably be CAO. Kayla, go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you. Through the mayor, great question. And probably something that the next council will want to consider because we will most likely have a DCC for fire. So you won't really want to have a voluntary contribution necessarily. So right now, in the current framework, without having to do any kind of bylaw or anything, it would really just be a council resolution. So when you have a one-off project, just like you do now, when you give readings to the bylaw, you're voting to accept that amenity, which is voluntary on the part of the developer.
Right.
You would, as a council, just say, we're accepting $100,000 and that is to be directed to the water fund or whatever fund you wanted. There are some other things that, again, probably with the next council, we could talk about even just in terms of policy. So our current amenity policy is in our OCP, and there's a list of what council has deemed to be acceptable amenity contributions. Right. And it's quite broad, and we do actually probably recommend council keep with that so that you have flexibility. And you can, on a per project basis, you can approve any number of amenities. So in the past, I'm pretty sure with this council, there was things like adding a bus stop outside of the development along the frontage or continuing a sidewalk beyond the frontage. So there's all different kinds of amenities that are sometimes kind of specific to that development or to that neighborhood. For example, contributing to the Pioneer Playground might be something that's suitable in one case. So you don't really want to box yourself in too much. But right now, just with a resolution of council for that particular development, you can direct where that fund goes to. So if it was, like I say, $100,000 for project A, if you're going to be allowing that project to go ahead, even if the developer said, I'd like to give it to the fire department, you as council can say, we don't really need that because we're funding fire from some other source. So you can say, we would be willing to approve it.
You like that?
for it going to a water fund, or a park, whatever you want. But yes, you would specify in that resolution. So council can make decisions by bylaw or by resolution. And then policy gives guidance to people on what you're willing to support. So the policy guidance we have in our current OCP mentions things like affordable housing, fire department contribution, general community amenities, and is quite broad. So it doesn't force you into anything.
Okay.
Some cities do have that where it's like $1,000 per door. But then if someone was going to give you $1,200, you've lost $200. Or if you wanted a bus stop and you wanted $800 a door, you're kind of boxed in. So we don't usually recommend being too prescriptive. But you can definitely make that decision on a case-by-case basis right now with no change to our current framework.
Okay, I like the flexibility part of it because there is definitely things that if there's no sense asking for a bus shelter if there's no bus running down there. So if we say that we know that the bus route is there, but yeah, I really like that idea. So council, we can without a resolution, just direct it to something, or you like a resolution?
So you would do it at the time that you're receiving that amenity. So developer A comes in, wants to rezone.
Yeah.
They're offering you $100,000. And then at that time, when you're advancing that bylaw through the statutory process, you as a council would vote on that. First of all, are you going to accept that amenity? Maybe 100 isn't enough in that case, and you think 150. Right. And then you, as part of that resolution of accepting it, would direct where it's going. So you would say, we're accepting this $100,000 amenity, and it is to be directed to the general water fund as part of that approval process.
Okay, so we do it on a case-by-case basis. That would be the most efficient way of doing it.
Yes, I think for now, in the next OCP review, there is already some existing guidance in the OCP. You might want to look at refining that and maybe just adding in, probably taking out the fire because it currently mentions fire.
With DCCs, yeah.
So just refining it and updating it. But again, being cautious not to confine yourselves too much so that you have that flexibility.
Yeah, we don't want to box yourself into something, but be flexible. Okay, that's great. Yeah, thank you. Great. That's got the wheels turning here. So thank you. Councillor Beal, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through to Jetta. I just had some questions about the statutory reserves, and I'm wondering, for instance, taking the example of off-street parking, the 830,000 that's there. So is some of that going to the parking lot that will be made? So I'm just wondering, this statement is before other things have gone ahead, but it is anticipated that that money will be going to certain projects. So I'm just kind of wondering where all those things stand.
Sure.
Okay, thanks. I'll leave it at that.
There, these balances are based on unaudited balances at the end of 2025. On Monday, we'll start going through some of the capital and minor capital changes and summaries for the financial plan. And that's the time you'll see, okay, we took 400,000 of that and applied it to the parking lot. And then we took 50,000 of it and applied it to bus stop amenities, because the off-street parking can be used for off-street parking, but it can also be used for active transportation amenities. And so that's why we were able to fund those bus stop amenities from that fund. The parkland is really related to acquisition of parkland, not development of parkland. And then the land sale reserve is quite flexible. It can be used for a number of different capital things. It's not really tied necessarily to land in terms of how council does spend that. Yeah. So yeah, we'll highlight those for you as we're going through on Monday.
Yeah. Carry on. Thank you.
Okay, that's the end of my presentation today. It's really just an introduction and kind of looking ahead as to what we'll go through next week, as well as just a bit of an overview on kind of that progress on the reserves, which I feel very proud of in terms of the progress that we've made. And I think it really brings a lot of improvement to the financial sustainability of the city's finances and just our long range planning. So just really kind of highlighted by a couple of those charts. So Again, just to review, we've got meetings next week and then on the 20th. And then assuming that council doesn't have other significant changes to make, then we would move to the statutory process of all of those bylaws before May 15th.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jetta. I'm very impressed and I'm very pleased that City of Parksville is on solid financial ground.
Great.
And it's through your guidance and also through the dedication of the council that we have here before you that actually paid attention to what you were suggesting. And we've followed through on your suggestions, and it's bode well for our sustainability and staying on a very strong reserve balance in many cases, and that's even increasing more. So thank you for your guidance on this. It's been fun for us numbers nerds that like that kind of stuff. It has been enlightening. We can make a difference, and we have, and in a good way, getting the best bang for the buck for the City of Parksville community. So thank you for that.
Very, very well.
Council, we don't need any resolution on that. Thank you again, Ms. Holmes. The bylaws, we have 3 readings for the Park Dedication Bylaw 2026, number 1602 for the adjacent to the Parksville Civic and Technology Center, 100 Jensen Avenue East, also as we affectionately call the Grassy Knoll, beside us here. And do I have a move or second for the recommendation? Moved by Councillor Gorp, seconded by Councillor Martin. Any discussion? Councillor Gorp, go ahead.
Thank you. I want to start off by thanking the mayor and the council previously supporting this resolution and staff for bringing this bylaw change. I much appreciate it. I think the community appreciates it as well. Just a little background why we brought this bylaw change. We do have a green space beside us. It's assumed to be a park space, but it's not designated park. It's part of this City Hall parcel, which could potentially be paved, developed for housing, or whatever the council would decide in the future. So I thought we need to preserve this parkland. We need to protect it for the current residents and the future residents of this area. When we talk about complete communities, Mayor, we talk about the housing, the need for parking, and as well as the amenities. And I think this green space provides that very essential amenity for these residents. Previously, we've heard that it was not being utilized as much as we would like to, but I think we are seeing more and more people using this space as the downtown densifies, as we see more residents in our downtown area. This is in proximity to 2 senior homes. So I see a lot of seniors utilizing this space, walking with their walkers and people walking with their pets. So I think protecting this for the future as a bylaw change, designating as a parkland, gives a lot of certainty to the neighborhood, to the residents, that this will be a space they can enjoy, keep enjoying for the future. And I think I spoke with the CAO on the importance of changing this designation, and perhaps you can highlight this for the public's interest, Ms. Kaler. To take something out of a parkland, what's the process? If somebody decides to, hey, we want to take this out of parkland, we would rather have housing or parking, what's the process? Thank you.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Yes, so in order to, once the bylaw passes, in order to change that parkland dedication, you actually need approval of the electors. So that's a referendum, which could also be an AAP or an alternative approval process, but you need elector approval to remove that designation of parkland. So it's pretty challenging to do that, I would suggest. So there's no going back. It's park for in perpetuity in reality. There's been some occasions where parkland has changed, but usually on a swap basis. So we have some limited experience with that in Parksville, where we've basically just swapped a parcel. So there's no net loss of park. But in my experience of like sort of 26 years of planning and land use, I can't think of one example where there's been an approved just, taking it out of park with no alternative swap in.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Gordon.
Yes, thank you. I'll follow up and I'll rest my case, Mayor. Thank you. I do want to mention that bringing this forward is not just adding an amenity that's much needed for the future, but also is in line with our OCP when we talk about people having access to green space within a specified distance, but is also, as we increase the population, we increase the green space allocation. So I think it ticks a lot of boxes for us as a community, for us as a council. And yeah, I'm looking forward to support from the rest of council on this. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that, Councillor Gore, and I appreciate that too. And you obviously know my affinity for that green space, the grassy knoll, as I call it. We have a number of daycare spaces around this fair area, and it gives me great joy anyways to actually watch all the kids from the various daycares all come and use that space, and they're just there and they're just enjoying it for what it is. And I think I like it best because it doesn't include structures. It doesn't include play items or something like that. It's more of a reflective and do what you want in the park. Grab a book on your lunchtime and go enjoy that space in the green space and in the trees. And so that's what I think is particularly important for that space. And it is definitely worthy of, as you say, preserving this forever. And so thanks for bringing this forward to make sure that it doesn't get lost on future generations as well. I'm fully supportive of this. Any other further comments by council at this time? It's moved and seconded. No further discussion. You want to arm wrestle? Okay, Councillor.
Yes, thank you. As you know, yesterday you talked about the busy day. So once we lose these kind of green spaces, the cost to kind of buy them back, we all saw that yesterday when we were at the Hamilton Marsh ribbon cutting ceremony. Millions of dollars to kind of try to preserve that a marshland. So we should be, I think, proactive, Mayor, to what already exists and looks like a park, may as well preserve it as a park. Thank you.
Are you okay? I'm going to call the question. You okay? All those in favor? Thank you. The pass is unanimous. Thank you, council. In conclusion here, folks, notices the motion and notices the motion for the next meeting coming up. Seeing none, we'll move on to liaison reports. And we're going to start with Councillor Martin, please, if you would. Start us off, Councillor Martin.
Thank you. Yes. Been a busy week. It has. Mount Arrowsmith Biosphere region is getting to be more understood because of the things that they've been doing. So last week we were introduced to the SDGs. These are Sustainable Development Goals that for this region and it's the Biosphere region that this is being worked on. And it's this is the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal and the Mount Arrowsmith Biosphere region. And if people would want to find out about that, what is involved in that, it's all on the website. So it's very complex. I'm not going to explain it here. So it's for those that are interested. And we're right in the middle of the biosphere. Parksville is right in the middle. So it's being looked after with the just vegetation and all sorts of things, water and everything. It just goes, it's very broad. Also, which is kind of unique, the Brant Festival starting on Friday. And the Brant Festival, from some history, was sponsored by Nature's Trust for, I believe, 17 years. And Mabry took it over a few years ago as a sponsor. The last 3 years with planned events between this year, April 10th and 13th. And if a person wants to find out about these events, there's so many, you could not mention it. They're on the Mabry programming, part of the programming website, not on the main website, the events part of the website. So that's important. And also, Parksville is an official sponsor of this. So we, as our citizens, give towards the Brant Festival. And it's very significant. in the area. There's a lot of tourism involved with this, so there will be economic development, the whole thing. My other liaison, I tell you, this seems like there's something going on every day lately. Parksville Historical Society. I don't know if any of you drive along there, but by right at the corner where the society is, down where Serious Coffee is, right around the corner, there's the little church there. It's been there over 100 years. And there's been a lot of fundraising going on here. They had hazmat suits, the whole thing, to make sure that they could fix it up and preserve it for the next 100 years. So that's being done right now. It's just about finished. Every donation this year that has been given to the society has been gone towards the church. It's a huge endeavor. We can always use more money, and it's all tax receipts, everything. And last Saturday, I attended an event that, you know, the windows are all taped up and everything, but you didn't even notice because it was in the evening. The world-renowned master flamenco guitarist, Jose Tecoronto, he was an amazing man from Mexico, and how we got him a little old Parksville. It's hard to believe. So sellout, a beautiful event. So that's just the beginning of their things that are coming this season. Another thing that you might notice on Facebook, if anyone here's on Facebook, there's one of our past presidents, Mary Ellen Campbell, is doing all the historical pictures from the archives, and she's featuring all of them. It's unbelievable. Every week there's a new one on there. All the archives of historical buildings, people, recognizing women, all sorts of, like in those days, you know, women weren't maybe recognized, right? They were in the kitchen. Well, they were out doing things in Parksville. So she's doing that. That's a beautiful thing on Facebook. And there's an art exhibit event starting. It goes from April 11th to June 28th. It's a weekly event, and to be alive with stories and activities that celebrates Parksville's past and present. So there's a whole section on that, and that again is on the website. The next council meetings, I might just mention what's going on that week, but it's just starting on Saturday, and it's going till the 28th of June. So those are the main things on my liaison report. So there we have it.
Thank you, Councillor Martin.
Lots happening. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Gore, you're next.
Yes, thank you. Make it quick, Mayor. The Parksville Beach Fest Society, the board is working tirelessly for an upcoming very busy year at the theater as well as at the sandcastles. So things are underway. Everything is working well, except there are a few, I think, points of concern that have been shared with staff when it comes to traffic management around the outdoor theater events. That's something the board had not budgeted. So this is causing some concern, and we've been in communication with staff on that. As well as the cancellation, perhaps likely cancellation of the Art in the Park because of, again, increased foot traffic and actual vehicle traffic during those busy times. So few setbacks there. I think we are getting emails as well about from the artists and concerned community members with the cancellation of Art in the Park. I would like us to perhaps find a solution to this, an alternate location or whatever it can be. Would love to have this important event continue this year if possible. But yeah, that's all I have. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And once again, I always appreciate the comments from the different organizations, and for requests like this. You know, as council, you know, we have a tendency to stay out of the weeds, and I always defer to our staff to make those decisions on what can be handled by our park and our facilities and our capacity. So I always defer to the people that actually are booking the spots to see if they can accommodate their requests, and I accept them as I receive them. So thanks for that, Councillor Corn. Councillor Beal, nothing today? Okay. No, okay. I miss you.
I have, I do have many meetings coming up, and I
Okay.
thought I'd skip
Okay.
one, but they are coming up like tomorrow and next week and
Okay.
so on.
I know,
So, yeah.
they never end. I know, I got it. Yeah, thanks for that, Councillor Beal. If there's no further new business, I'm going to ask for a motion of adjournment, please. Moved by Councillor Gore, seconded by Councillor Martin. All those in favor? Carries unanimous. Thank you, council. Great meetings, financial plans, exciting.